Hello and welcome back to another episode of Wired In, the KONTEK podcast. I have special guests with me today, replacing or standing in for Marcus. He'll be back later. But we have Jeff Howard and Connell Smallwood. Thank you for joining. Both programmers at heart and leading the design team for KONTEK. Jeff, I want to start with you. We are talking about UI and UX today, which are very interchangeable terms in the industry, I think. At least people use them interchangeably, but that may not necessarily be so. So can you give us a brief definition of those and why the heck does it matter? Why are we talking about that today?
Yeah, sure thing, Brandon. Thanks for having me. So I'm a senior UI UX engineer, and what that means is I am responsible for the user experience, UX user experience, which is a little bit different. They do go hand in hand, but a user interface is a specific device or a specific way that end users interact with an AV system. It could be a touch panel, it could be an occupancy sensor, it could be just looking at something on a screen to indicate how the system is behaving. So that is the interface between a person and the system. And user experience is a little more robust than that. It sort of defines the overall feeling a user gets when they are operating and using the system. So things like projectors, video walls, the audio quality, how easy the interfaces are to use and how intuitive they are. That all is like globally wrapped into UX, into the user experience. And what Connell and I do is design those systems with the end user in mind. You know, how are they going to experience a system, and is it going to do what the system is designed to do to facilitate meetings, lectures, anything that needs to happen in that space?
Yeah, great. Connell, anything to add or distinction on that?
Absolutely. Those were very good points Jeff made. One thing that I'll add is that the UI is how you make it look pretty and what they're actually touching on a touch screen or a button panel. But UX is where it really dives into how do you feel using the room. And I think you said that, Jeff. One of the biggest things that I like to think about is preparing for the room shouldn't be as stressful as preparing for the meeting itself. So
I like that.
you don't want to have that being anxious to use the actual equipment in the room and setting up for the meeting. In comparison, your actual meeting is what you should be worried about. So that's when we start talking about the user experience behind things there.
Marcus has made the point a couple of times that if you don't have a great UX, people don't want to go into the room and use it. Like you're saying, Connell, they'll find another room or another way. They'll take their meeting from the desk. It's like it's much easier to just log into Zoom or whatever from my computer, which eventually impacts the ROI essentially of the room and of the space in general. It degrades the performance of the organization if you can't have a great meeting, for example. Do you find that to be the case in your experience with UX? Is that trend with how you guys see it?
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. As soon as someone has issues or resistance on using the room, it kind of turns you off from even wanting to touch the room. That's what you run into, and that's our job. I think when I think about providing a control system for a room, the end user should be able to walk into the room and have no fear. They don't need any user guides, no manuals. If they are asking questions when they're using a system or see a touch panel, I don't feel like I did my job correctly.
How do you make it better? I mean, I know that's such a broad question, but like, what are some principles or things that you guys are thinking about in doing your work or designing a space, helping somebody's dream or vision come to life? Like, what are the, call it, checklists or things that are going off in your mind? Like, how can I make this simpler? How can I make this easier? How can I make it more adaptable to the different ways people meet and their different technologies? Like, what's going through your mind when you're setting those things up?
That's a great question. I think the two ways I approach that are first to think about just the audio and video signal flow. Where are the video sources and audio sources? How do they get to the loudspeakers? How do they get to a Zoom or Teams meeting. And then the other side of that is the touch panel or the user interface. We wanted it to look as clean and as simple as possible. Like Connell was saying, if people are confused by the interface, if they just don't understand it or they don't have a good experience during a meeting, they're not going to want to use that space. So a lot of times we will lean on a client to say, hey, do you have a style guide that you use, or do you have other rooms where you've had success, and just build off of that? We can scale it up, scale it down from a small huddle space to, a 100-seat lecture hall. It really is just about ease of use and about making sure that, like, when that person is up at the podium or is on a meeting, that they feel confident that everything is going to work right.
One of our goals is make the user interface easy, familiar, and intuitive. Again, as I was saying earlier, my goal is to make a control system that doesn't require a manual, user guide, or even invoke questions. Obviously, there's going to be users that are kind of averse to technology, but if I've done my job correctly, they shouldn't have any questions and can just walk up to the panel and use the room. When thinking about system design or UI design, we probably want to focus on not having too many button presses. Obviously, I max it out when I'm thinking about control systems, a max of 2 to 3 button presses to do a certain action in the system or in the room. Once you start going too far deep into menus and you're pressing 3, 4, 5 buttons to do a certain action in a room, you just lost the user at that point. So that's one of the big things. Another thing that we think about is button affordance. Button affordance is essentially making pressable buttons that do actual actions, look like buttons, and not to be confusing with maybe text on the panel. So it makes it very easy for the user to operate a touch panel and kind of self-guide themselves.
Let the record show that when you need something to be simple and elegant, that is actually the most difficult thing to achieve. And so your emphasis on, I don't want that many buttons to press, I don't want that many steps, that actually requires a lot of hard work on the front end, or in this case, maybe the back end, to make things really, really simple for the user. And it makes me think of, this is kind of an obvious cliche example, but it makes me think of like Steve Jobs at Apple. That was a big drive of him and his work with Johnny Ive, which was like, how do I make this thing where I don't need a button at all? I don't need anything. And so you have this like clean plane of glass on a phone, which was unique at the time. So do you guys feel that maxim is true, that if you want something simple, that's actually the most difficult thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was at Infocom in 2018 and attended a seminar on user experience, and they said one of the main thesis points was that, we all now have many touch panels and computers in our pockets everywhere we go. So in terms of being familiar with how to open an app and do a function on our phones, the AV industry really needed to catch up in terms of ease of use and making it look clean, making it clear, because an app isn't going to have, a document to go along with it to say, to do this, follow these 14 steps. You really need it to be, like Connell said, 1 or 2 button presses, you're off and running. And I think the challenge for us as UI designers is to, just like Connell said, make it clear what the buttons are doing. There's a progression between pages, they're visually consistent, and the user is going to have, like I said, confidence in the system forming as you go through the buttons and the menus.
When we're thinking about these systems, we're working with systems that can have multiple ins and outs. Most of our technology is moving towards more of a matrix style systems, whether it be a matrix in a box or AV over IP. You got any input to any output. Now, our job as the control programmer is, hey, what does the end user really need? They don't need to know that I could send a camera back into my PC, or I can send a camera to the actual display. what what's their use case? What do they really need to see on the panel? And we'll do the work and thought process behind the scenes to make all those parts and pieces work.
Mhm.
So it's definitely, it takes some brain power to get that going, but that's the end goal in the whole thing.
Yeah, I can see in the kind of tech industry more broadly, at least for like office work with computers, the where I see things going is just doing everything with your voice. It's like I don't even need a screen almost. I don't even need buttons on a keyboard or a mouse. I just need to talk to it. Like I see a lot more features coming out with tools like that and how agents can build things just by natural language and all that, which is really fascinating. I don't think AV is going to get there next week, but it's heading in that direction maybe.
It's
Um,
coming. I think a lot
yeah.
of the user interface devices, they have cameras, they have microphones. So in terms of the future of voice commands, of gestures, just not even needing um, to touch a screen,
Yeah.
we've seen the industry come a long way in terms of camera tracking. I
Mm.
think initially it was very expensive and very difficult to do, and now you're seeing out of box solutions from a number of manufacturers that have really smart uh, auto tracking, auto framing
Mm.
for people in meetings. And we've seen a huge response from clients saying that that has improved their experience in their virtual
Really?
meetings.
Mm.
And I think one of the biggest double-edged swords we've seen is that during the pandemic, people they got really smart about hybrid and virtual meetings, um, but they also, when they come back to a physical conference room or a physical meeting room, they want to have that same intimacy where the camera shot is framed correctly, that the microphone is right there.
Mm.
So I think we touched on this earlier, where if a user experience is poor, they're just going to take those meetings at their desk with their headphones
Yeah.
on, and they're not going to want to use a system. So the challenge for us is, how do we um, how do we provide a solution where the user experience in a room with 6, 8, 10 other people can provide that intimacy and that connection that you need for those meetings in a larger space.
Yeah. Which is hard to do. I mean, if you've got multiple mics that are close to each other, let's say somebody's on their computer, and there's people remotely and there's just a bunch of different it's hard to get that right, to get that feedback, the echo, all of that. And it's that's really difficult. I want to shift gears a bit, and I know a big component of doing your work well, the UI and the UX together, is having a client's brand, their visual brand, incorporated into the aspects of the screen, multiple screens, multiple offices, and how that might be rendered in different ways. And I'm thinking, from a marketing perspective, thinking about a great UX is that every channel, asset, device, platform, they all have this cohesion to this is the brand. This is, it's got this color palette, this type style, so how do you guys think about that and doing that well across all the different, I don't know, platforms, channels that you guys have in your industry?
So I'd like to take that one. So weirdly enough, the first thing that I do to kind of get my creative juices flowing is I check out the company's
Mm.
website. The website's going to guide me in how to match their look, their feel, and even the culture of the company. You're gonna get that feel from the actual website. Obviously, you'll see logos there. You'll see colors that they use, and you kind of fly from there. The other thing that a lot of entities have are brand guides. These bigger entities, like a lot of higher education we do, they have their full brand guides telling you, hey, what our color codes are, what our fonts are, and this all really drives you into matching the identity of the company. So yeah, like I said, I usually start on a website. I'm not sure how you get the gears going there, Jeff, but that's usually where I start.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think if there are any uh, examples of other systems where the client has had success, um, we'll ask them for either screenshots of that or a source code from their UI platform. Yeah, and just a conversation with them about what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? We will, throughout the project timeline, we'll create mock-ups of the user interface screens and present them to the client, and it's a conversation. It's not, one out-of-box solution where we have a template and this is what you get. The client might like certain buttons or certain color combinations. There was one project I did where I actually created 3 versions of the same interface page. One was a white background, a gray background, and a black background, and say you can go dark mode, high contrast. What is going to work for your users in this space. And a lecture hall might have a different need than a huddle room. So it's just about being flexible. And a lot of times you'll get to a client that has just done it one way for so long, and that's the only way they know. So it's our job to also be creative and sort of inspire where they can improve upon their user experience in terms of going a different direction with a UI screen or with just how the system flows through the button presses and through the menus in that way.
So important to, I guess, the level of the anxiety that a end user can feel when using a room. Once you're matching their logos, colors, fonts, and everything, it makes the system feel like it's a part of this company. And I think us taking those steps to match the identity of the company really shows that we care about our client and the customer and what they're trying to do. So the time that me and Jeff kind of take to hone in on those things, I think is a step that would be ill-advised to miss for other integrators. But it does show that we care at the end of the day.
It's about a level of polish and craftsmanship and quality. I think that's what you guys are getting across. Like when you step into a KONTEK designed, integrated, implemented space, it should have this level of polish, right? Especially if you're going to be spending $500,000, $1 million on a beautiful space. It should feel beautiful at every level of detail. Do you feel that kind of drive when you're working with your clients?
Oh, absolutely. I think, when you walk into a space, you're going to notice the biggest things first, right? We often say it's the AV industry is capital V because you're going to notice a video wall, you're going to notice a projector, but it's really those fine details that once you are using the system, once you're familiar with it, those going that extra mile is really going to create the most positive user experience possible. And I think it's why we've had so much repeat business with our clients, is because they know that like you said, craftsmanship is really what's at the heart of our company. And like I said, it's an ongoing conversation because a lot of companies will just give you one thing, and when the project starts, it could be some higher level decision makers, but once it reaches the end user, the system might not be exactly the way they envisioned it. So throughout the project timeline, we are checking in. We are visiting the job site. We're talking with the people who are going to be using the system. And then even after a project is complete, we have our support team who's going to be right behind us, touching base with the client, making sure they're happy with the experience, not just from a functionality standpoint, but from the way that the system is being used, and that goes right in line with user experience.
Imagine you're talking to a leader at a corporate environment, a hospital, government, academic setting, and they're thinking like, I've got this idea for a space. I don't like our current space, or we're building a new office or a new wing. And they're thinking about taking on a big AV project. What do you wish that they knew before they really started in earnest? What would you recommend? What advice or wisdom do you have?
I would want them to know that they're not in a box. You can make this room be whatever you want. You can have the look and feel. You can make it as automated as you want. If you just want to walk into a room and it just wakes up and starts running, we can do that. If you want to walk into a room and it's a simple one touch, your calendar invite is on the panel and you want to jump right in, we can do that. If you want to have a complex room, say 3 to 4 different displays in a room, and you want to be able to share your students' information to any one of those displays in any type of combination, sure, we can do that. Like we can do anything. We're not going to put you in a box. We're going to listen to what your needs and use cases are. And hey, let me and Jeff will put our minds together to make it as easy to use, but also have the ability to be as complex as you want as well.
Any negative scoping or cautionary tales to say you can do that, but this is what we need to be thinking about it instead, or anything like that. That's like, yeah, we can do anything, but do think about this.
I will definitely, I'll give that to Jeff. But what you definitely have to think about, I said keeping them inside of a box. You definitely need to guide the end user on use case, and are you really going to need to be sending multiple sources to multiple destinations at the end of the day? Probably not. So we do have to put the reins on things, and it's something we think about every day for any system.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think Connell hit the nail on the head with use case. I think with the larger spaces, the more complex spaces, especially divisible spaces, you really want to get an idea of what are the most common use cases. And if, for example, a room is going to be open, one big space for 95% of the time, that just guides us in terms of designing a UI and system behavior behind the scenes to facilitate that and to make that as easy to use. And then behind a tech page or an admin page, password protected, so most end users don't have to see it. You can get into okay, we're going to divide it. We're going to send these sources to one side. We're going to have different functionality on the other side. So dream big, absolutely. We can do anything with enough time and enough knowledge of what your needs are. But once the project starts and we drill down to, okay, what is the day-to-day user going to be doing in the space? And then that's really where Connell and I shine in terms of being able to have somebody walk into a space and maybe not even know that it's a full matrix video system or that there's mix minus audio going on. They just come in and use the space and are happy with the experience.
So if I could summarize, maybe dream big, but do think really hard about what you really need, really want day to day, what your team's going to need, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with these hybrid spaces too, the ability to sort of change the look and feel of them, and we can do that with different interfaces. It's funny because I feel like those edge cases, not the day-to-day use, but those edge cases where they say, well, we have a big meeting, we have a VIP coming in and we have to use this system in a different way, but those are the high visibility ones. And that's really where we want to go through the system with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that it's bulletproof, because inevitably that's when, you're not getting the microphone mix that you need when the VIP is there. So talking about not only day-to-day use case, but also like how to make this system really sing, and just going through our process, like I said, and just constant communication. We want to be a partner in developing these spaces and making sure that when it's all said and done, that the client is putting their best foot forward in utilizing the space.
You spoke about divisible rooms. That is a big user case when we kind of have to put the rails on things. If you think about it, divisible room, once you go combined, sure, you could have a situation where you could use the left or the right room to present from and use all sources from the left or the right. But in most use cases, let's ask the customer, hey, what side is going to be your primary room? And then that kind of guides us in making our programming simpler and saying that, hey, when this room is combined, you're going to use room A as your primary control source. Your sources from room A is what gets shared to both sides of the room. You do your presentations from the primary side in room A and so forth. So I think when you mentioned combined divided rooms, that's one of the biggest examples of when we really need to hone in on use cases and kind of guide the customer there.
Think just real quick, I can't tell you the number of times I've gone to meet a new client or been with our support team and talked to an existing client, and we're talking about their needs, and we get to a divisible space and say, oh, great. How long have you had this space? It's like, oh, I've had about 8, maybe 10 years. It's like, great. How many times have you had it in the divided configuration? It's like, oh, maybe once, maybe twice. And you're just like, okay, is it really a divisible space at that point, or is it just one big room?
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, having those conversations early on in the project process, talking to our account team and our design team about how best to meet what is actually happening in the room. That's so important, and I think that's what KONTEK does really well throughout the project timeline.
That's helpful. That's something that Marcus has always emphasized, is if you're starting the idea of what you want to do, give us a call. Call us as early as possible, because all those decisions need to be sorted out way before you start, say, the architectural plans, the build, like all of that needs to be thought through in a really cohesive, comprehensive way. So yeah, that tracks. Well, guys, thanks so much for your time, your wisdom, your experience. I know you guys are in the weeds all day thinking about these kind of things, but I'm glad we kind of surfaced a bit to talk about how that impacts some of these big projects, especially for leaders considering this kind of work. So super helpful to have you on and have your wisdom and experience shared with everyone. So I'm hoping we'll have you back on another episode, but in the meantime, Jeff, Connell, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks so much. This was fun.